We want to turn now for more on what the U.S. Can do to defeat ISIS, and we're going to talk about that with Mike Morell, who is the former deputy director of the CIA. Of course, he's now the senior security contributor for CBS News, and Tom Donilon, former national security advisor for President Obama. Let me just ask both of you the same question. And Tom, I'll just start with you. Is the administration taking this seriously enough?
I think so, because it's a serious threat. As the congressman said, I think we are in an entirely new and complicated phase in the effort against terrorism. Multiple vectors. ISIS, as you were discussing with the congressman, is a large organization. It controls a large swath of territory. There may be 20,000 foreign fighters there. There may be several thousand who hold Western passports, and that presents an ongoing threat to the United States. ISIS presents a threat to our important allies and partners in the region, in Iraq and in Jordan and Lebanon and elsewhere.
Well,
so it is a very serious threat.
I ask you this question because in the midst of all of this, Friday, the President's National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, said this.
Too often, what's missing here in Washington is a sense of perspective. Yes, there is a lot going on. Still, while the dangers we face may be more numerous and varied, they are not of the existential nature we confronted during World War II or during the Cold War. We cannot afford to be buffeted by alarmism and a nearly instantaneous news cycle.
So Tom, explain that to me.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, it is important to have perspective, and it is important for decision makers, while you're dealing with the crisis of the moment, to keep your eye on the long haul and the strategic challenges and opportunities that the country has. That said, as we sit here today, as I said, we have a serious new set of developments in the terror area. By the way, it's not just ISIS. It's ISIS in Iraq, and Michael can comment on this with more depth than I can. It's ISIS in Iraq and Syria, but it's in Yemen with AQAP, the group that inspired the attacks in Paris, and we have a collapsing situation in Yemen. We have other Al-Qaeda groups in Syria and in North Africa, and we have this social media dynamic that is radicalizing individuals around the world and individuals in small groups, and we have a first-class crisis in Europe right now.
Yeah.
So perspective is really important here. And does ISIS pose a threat to the United States? Absolutely. Does it pose a threat to the order in the Middle East and the borders and the whole system in the Middle East? Absolutely. But is it the biggest threat to the homeland right now? No. AQAP in Yemen is a bigger threat. Al-Qaeda in Pakistan is a bigger threat. And the Khorasan group, which is a part of the al-Nusra group in Syria, which is separate from ISIS, is a bigger threat right now. So perspective is really important here, Bob.
But, I mean, when you put all that together, no, I don't think this has anything close to the evil that the Nazis represented. And obviously, this is not the Cold War with the Soviet Union. But it seems to me this is something that I'm still not sure this administration is galvanized to fight this fight and do what's necessary to do it.
So Bob, let me just give you a sense of sort of where we are after 6 months in this fight, right? It's been 6 months now of airstrikes. We're getting a large number of executions now. The most recent was absolutely the most brutal. So where are we, right? We have had a big victory in this fight so far, which is we have stopped the ISIS blitzkrieg across Iraq. We stopped it in its tracks, right? They have gained no more territory since we started these airstrikes. If we had not done this, they would be in Baghdad today, right? So that's our significant victory here. And we're going to have to push them back. That's going to take some time. It's going to take training of Iraqi troops. It's going to be figuring out a strategy in Syria. But they've also had a big victory, Bob, and their big victory has been the spread of their message. That's been faster than anything we've ever seen from Al-Qaeda. So now you have terrorist groups in Algeria, in Libya, and in Egypt, and increasingly in Afghanistan, who are taking on the ISIS brand. We had one of those groups just 10 days ago attack a hotel in Tripoli and kill an American. And we also have this self-radicalization that Tom talked about in Western Europe, in Australia, and Canada. It's all ISIS related. So that's been their big victory here. But that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, well, and I do think that the U.S. and coalition response has been substantial. I checked in with the coalition authority on Friday afternoon with respect to the numbers. There's been 2,300 airstrikes, half of them, by the way, in Syria, half of them in Iraq. About 6,000 ISIS fighters killed, half the leadership taken off the battlefield. But this is just the beginning, Bob. This is a long-term effort that will go well beyond President Obama's administration, frankly. We've done this stopping the momentum that Michael mentioned. We've begun to push back, but taking back territory requires an effective on-the-ground effort. We don't have that yet. We're building that, and that's frankly months away. I think it can be done, by the way, through training the Iraqi security forces and providing them with the support that they need and shrinking ISIS, and by the way, pushing back on their narrative of success, which is absolutely, absolutely critical here. Another key thing we're going to have to do, though, in addition to the ground effort in Iraq, is getting the politics right. Your reporter, Holly Williams' excellent piece here underscored a real challenge, which is getting political reconciliation and power sharing in Iraq going forward. Otherwise, we'll have a big problem.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back and talk some more about this. So we'll be back. Back now with Mike Morell and Tom Donilon, and you're both talking about the threat here, and both of you agree that there's going to have to be some kind of force on the ground, but who is it going to be?
Well, in Iraq, it will need to be principally the Iraqi security forces. And again, as your correspondent pointed out, there is a lot of pushback against ISIS by the Shia militias, which are a complicated organization and can be quite sectarian and violent. And that's a real challenge going forward. But at the core, it is building up the Iraqi security forces to retake territory.
And on the Syria side, I don't think we've quite figured that out yet. Training 5,000 moderate opposition a year, which we haven't even started to do yet, is not a large enough number in my view. The number is going to have to be larger in Syria. And we have to get Syria right, because if we don't get Syria right, then ISIS will simply come across that border as we have success in Iraq, and we wouldn't really have gained anything.